growth and development in arthropods, such as the insect. In arthropods, there is intermittent or discontinuous growth. This is because there is the exoskeleton that is rigid. So growth occurs at intervals such that there are periods of growth followed by periods of no growth. This is clearly shown when we plot the size of the arthropod or insect against time. So the increase in the body size is going to be on and off. So there are periods of growth followed by a period of no growth. So you have periods of rapid growth followed by periods of no growth. Now the bodies of arthropods are enclosed by the tough exoskeleton. Look at this beetle here. There is a tough exoskeleton covering it. There's a tough exoskeleton that covers the body. This exoskeleton prevents increase in their size. Growth is only possible when the exoskeleton is shed off in a process known as molting or SDCs. Just before the old exoskeleton is cast off, a new soft one is formed underneath the old one. Now, before the new exoskeleton hardens, the insect swallows air or water to inflate its body to a new size after every molt. Cell division continues to take place during the period between the molting. So when the body size is plotted against time, you have this tear-like growth. The steep portions, these ones here, correspond to the time of molting and rapid expansion, while the flat one correspond to stages between molts when growth is limited by the exoskeleton. So in order for growth to take place, here you can see in this photograph, the insect is clambering out of its old exoskeleton. And before this new exoskeleton has hardened, it expands rapidly. So this is why you have this steep portion. And then once the exoskeleton has hardened, then there's very little growth that can take place. So the curve is almost flat. Now the period between one molt and another one is called an instar. So many insects go through several instars in the course of their development. So after the hatching of the egg, the larva will undergo several molting. So there are a number of instars before it attains the adult size. Now, the reproductive processes that takes place in insects comes about in two ways. Now here, so previously we've seen how the growth in insects is discontinuous because of the presence of the exoskeleton. And in order for growth or expansion to take place, molting must occur. And during molting, the insect comes out of its old exoskeleton in a process that's known as molting or estasis. Now, reproductive process comes about in two ways in insects. There is the asexual mode of reproduction in some insects, in which eggs may be formed in the female and laid without fertilization. The eggs then hatch into larval forms that grow and develop into female adults. The female adults may then produce eggs without fertilization and lay the eggs, then hatch. In some cases, even the eggs may hatch within the female's body. Now, the advantage of this form of asexual reproduction seen in insects such as aphids is that it leads to rapid population growth, and it therefore enables the insect to take advantage of very conducive environmental conditions. When there is plenty of food, then they can reproduce asexually to increase their population tremendously. But the more common form of reproduction is sexual, in which sperms from the male insects fertilize the eggs in the female to form an embryo which is enclosed in a protective egg. The female then lay eggs, maybe singly, like this, or in some cases, such as in the cockroach, the eggs are laid in batches within a protective case that is known as an oothecum. So within an oothecum, you can have many eggs that are contained. The number varies depending on the species. After the laying of eggs and hatching, the young insect then undergoes growth in the form of metamorphosis. So growth and development in insects occurs through metamorphosis. Now, what is metamorphosis? This is a pattern of growth and development that involves transformation in the shape from one stage to another until maturity is attained. There are two forms of metamorphosis in insects. The first one is known as complete metamorphosis. Complete metamorphosis involves 4 stages. There is the egg, where the embryo develops, the larva, the pupa, and the adult or imago. The larva, that is single, then the pupa or imago. Each stage plays an important role in the life cycle. For example, the eggs hatch into an immature juvenile called the larva. Within the egg, the embryo develops. So the egg is the stage for embryonic development. The egg hatches into the larva, which again, depending on the species, may be known as a caterpillar, like in the butterfly and the moth, or maggots in flies, and grub for beetles. The larva eats a lot, grows rapidly through several molds. The larva later transforms into the resting stage known as the pupa or chrysalis. The transformation involves encasement of the larva in a process known as pupation. So from the larva to the pupa, there is a process of pupation. And the pupal case in which the organism is contained is known as a puparium or cocoon. That is a protective encasement that contains the pupa. Within the puparium, the larval tissues are broken down and transformed into the adult tissues. The adult then emerges from the open puparium, and the role of the adult stage is reproduction and dispersal. Complete metamorphosis is also seen in the bees, where the adults lay eggs. The eggs hatch into larvae. Then the larva undergoes several molting. It undergoes several developmental stages known as the instars. You have the first, second, third instar before the third stage of the larva is transformed into the pupa. Then within the pupa, there's growth and development and transformation into the adult tissues. So that is complete metamorphosis. It takes place in insects such as houseflies, wasps, bees, butterflies, sassafly, moths, and mosquitoes. The other form of metamorphosis is known as incomplete metamorphosis. Now, in incomplete metamorphosis, there are three main stages: the adult, the larval stage known as the nymph, and of course there is the egg. The egg is the first, which hatches into the larval stage known as the nymph, and then the nymph develops through several molting into an adult stage. So, in the incomplete metamorphosis, the egg hatches into a miniature form, a small form of an adult known as the nymph. The nymph is smaller, has no wings, and the sex organs are immature. Then the nymph goes through several moltings, and on the last molt, it forms wings and becomes an adult. So we have insects that have incomplete metamorphosis that include the grasshoppers and the cockroach. So grasshoppers and the cockroach. The egg case, that is the othecum, that from this there are several eggs that will hatch into the nymph. Then the nymph undergoes several moltings. It goes through several instars to become the adult. The adult then lays eggs. The eggs hatch into the nymph, and the cycle continues. Examples of insects with incomplete metamorphosis include locusts, grasshoppers, and cockroaches. Now, you can summarize by looking at the essential differences between complete and incomplete metamorphosis. The most important difference is that in the complete metamorphosis, there are 4 developmental stages, namely the egg, the larva, pupa, and adult. But in the incomplete, there are only 3 developmental stages: the egg, the nymph, and the adult. The second difference is that in the complete metamorphosis, the egg hatches into a larva, which is very different from the adult. But in the case of the incomplete metamorphosis, the egg hatches into a nymph that is a small version of the adult. It's similar, only that it is smaller, may not have wings, and the sex organs are immature. Now, what are the advantages of metamorphosis in insects? The first advantage is that the larval and adult stages, especially in the complete metamorphosis, occupy different niches, thus there is less competition, hence higher chances of survival. So metamorphosis prevents competition between the different stages. For example, in the butterfly, the caterpillar feeds on leaves, while the adult feeds on nectar from flowers. So there is no way that the two will compete for the same food. This increases the chances of survival. Also, in insects such as the mosquito, the larva is aquatic while the adult is terrestrial, so they occupy different habitats. This also increases the chances of survival. The second advantage is that, again, in the complete metamorphosis, that the insects are able to survive adverse conditions, such as drought and extreme temperatures. This is because the dormant stage, the pupa, does not feed, does not move around, and it is protected in the encasement known as a puparium or cocoon, and it can stay in this cocoon for as long as the adverse conditions last. So in this way, the insect is able to survive harsh environmental conditions.